"That woman stole my wife's necklace. Cuff her right now." The shout hit so hard that the music stopped instantly. Glasses froze mid-air, conversations died, and every eye turned toward the center of the white marble hall. There, under the glow of crystal chandeliers, stood Clara, the maid, kneeling, hands shaking, face soaked in tears. Two security guards rushed forward, while the millionaire Arthur Brandon watched silently, holding his 10-month-old son. Clara tried to speak, but her voice cracked, nearly strangled by fear. I didn't take anything, sir. I swear on everything I have." But nobody cared to listen. The guests whispered, filmed, and some even laughed. That fake pity people show when the tragedy isn't theirs. The diamond necklace, worth a small fortune, had vanished minutes before the party began, and fate chose the simplest face in the house to blame. Helena, Arthur's wife, glared at Clara with disgust. "Who do you think you're fooling, huh? I knew this day would come. People like you can't see something expensive without wanting to grab it." The words hit like a slap. Clara felt the floor disappear beneath her. The baby started crying in his father's arms, loud, desperate, as if he understood the injustice unfolding before him. Arthur tried to soothe him, but Lucas kept struggling, reaching his tiny arms toward the woman on the ground. "Strange. He seems to want to go to her," one of the guests murmured, uneasy. A guard grabbed Clara by the arm. "Get up. You'll explain yourself at the station." Clara resisted weakly, pleading through tears. "Please, Mr. Arthur, you know me. I've worked here for months. I've never touched anything that wasn't mine." But Arthur, pressured by the stares and his wife's wounded pride, answered coldly, "If you're innocent, you've got nothing to fear. Let the police handle it." The click of the handcuffs echoed like a sentence, and in that moment the baby stopped crying, just stared at her, eyes watery, as if he understood the cruelty of what was happening. Clara was dragged down the hallway, flashes bursting around her. Outside, a fine, cold rain began to fall as she was shoved into the private security car. Her shoes were soaked, her uniform stained with dirt. Each step felt like a wound to her dignity. "Stealing a necklace, how shameful," one woman muttered. "It was obvious a maid like that wouldn't be happy just cleaning." The poison in their words cut deeper than the cuffs. Arthur watched from a distance, frozen. Something inside him twisted. His son's cry still echoed in his mind, and Clara's desperate, honest eyes haunted him. But Helena squeezed his hand and whispered, "Don't be fooled by tears, darling. They're great performers." Arthur nodded, unsure. His gaze stayed fixed on the mansion's doorway, where the woman had just disappeared. Outside, the rain grew heavier. Clara sat inside the car, trembling from cold and shame. Through the glass, a few neighbors stared curiously. She lowered her head, eyes filling again, whispering the same words over and over, "I didn't do it, I didn't do it." Inside the mansion, the party tried to carry on, but the mood had shattered. Helena forced a smile while gossiping. "Did you see how she tried to hide it? These people think they can blend in, but they never stop being what they are." One guest muttered, "Still, that was harsh, don't you think? She seemed sincere." "Naive of you," Helena replied, raising her glass. "Innocence is a thief's favorite disguise." Arthur stayed silent. The baby slept now, calm, almost peaceful, but with an odd expression, as if something deep inside him knew the truth hadn't been told yet. When the police car pulled away, the rain turned into a storm. Clara watched through the window, seeing her pain reflected in the glass. The siren's wail mocked her. In just a few minutes, a simple, honest life had turned into a nightmare. "Why, God," she whispered, tears blending with rain. The driver said nothing. On the radio, the headline was already spreading. "Maid arrested at Millionaire'S party, suspected of jewelry theft." Her reputation was destroyed in seconds. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Arthur watched the necklace being laid on the table by investigators. Helena insisted, of course it was her. Who else would have a reason? But something didn't fit. Arthur glanced again at the baby, and a chill ran down his spine. Little Lucas stirred and softly mumbled something Arthur had never heard before. "Shoo-shoo." Arthur frowned. Helena, have you ever heard him say that? No, must be baby talk. Why? Arthur stayed quiet, but something clicked in his mind. That sound. Shoo shoo. It was as if the baby was calling someone, as if that word carried a memory. And outside in the car, fading under the rain, Clara whispered the same sound through her sobs, trying to calm herself. Shoo shoo, it's gonna be okay. Two worlds divided by injustice, yet bound by a single sound. A sound that soon enough would uncover the whole truth. The rain was still falling when the car stopped in front of the police station. Clara's uniform was drenched, her hair stuck to her face, and her cuffed wrists ached. She tried to take a deep breath, but the knot in her throat made even dignity feel impossible. Camera flashes were already waiting. Some reporter had gotten the tip, and now she was a headline before she could even defend herself. "Maid caught stealing at Millionaire'S party," shouted a reporter, pushing a microphone in her face. "Why did you do it, miss? Are you sorry?" Clara turned her head away. She didn't want anyone to see her tears. Inside the station, the heavy clang of the iron doors closing behind her felt like a blow. A cop glanced at her file, snorted and muttered, "Another one who thought she could get away with it. Guess she figured no one would notice." She tried to explain. "I didn't take anything, sir. I was just cleaning the hall when people started yelling." But he laughed with scorn. "That's what they all say. Wait until we find the necklace. Then the story changes." Meanwhile, the news was spreading across social media. The party video, filmed by a guest, was already circulating with flashy captions. Thousands of comments poured in. "Of course it's always the staff. She must have been desperate, poor thing. Steal from the rich, and it's always the poor who pay for it." Each word felt like an invisible wound bleeding inside her. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere was one of fake relief. Helena served coffee to her friends as if nothing had happened. "It was awful, but at least the necklace is back," said one of them. Helena smiled faintly. "People like that think they can fit in, but blood always tells. Instinct shows up sooner or later." Arthur sat in his office, listening in silence. Something about all this didn't sit right. He knew the look of a liar, and Clara's eyes didn't have it. But social pressure, gossip, and his wife's wounded pride pushed him into silence. It was easier to believe she was guilty than face the storm of admitting a mistake. He glanced at his son sleeping in the crib and noticed something strange. Even asleep, the baby softly mumbled, "Shoo shoo." Arthur shivered. That word had been echoing in his mind since the night before. Who taught him that, he wondered. But Helena cut in. "You're still thinking about that woman. Please, Arthur, don't ruin our reputation over a maid." Arthur looked away. "It's just that the baby reacts when he hears that sound. I've never seen him like this." Helena chuckled sarcastically. "Coincidence. She probably said that nonsense while cleaning. He just got used to it." But something deep inside him whispered it wasn't coincidence. In her cell, Clara huddled in a corner, trying to stay warm. The shouts of other inmates echoed through the halls, and the mix of mold and sweat made the air almost unbreathable. She couldn't understand how everything had flipped so fast. Hours earlier, she'd been cleaning the floor, smiling because the baby had laughed at her. Now she was treated like a thief. The worst part wasn't the cold or the fear, it was the contempt. She remembered the faces at the party, people she saw every day who praised her coffee, who asked her to help with their coats and trays. Suddenly, they all looked at her like she was filth. The laughter, the phones filming, the whispers, her pain turned into entertainment. It was humiliation, raw, cruel, and public. A cop walked up to the cell. "Your hearing's tomorrow. If you want, you can call someone." Clara looked up, her voice breaking. "I've got no one to call." "Family." "Not anymore." He nodded and left without another word. Across town, Arthur still couldn't sleep. He kept turning his laptop on and off, replaying the security footage from the party. The guards said they'd checked everyone, but he wanted to see it himself. In one of the clips, something caught his eye. Clara never entered the room where the necklace had been kept. She stayed in the hall the whole time, cleaning glasses. But one of Helena's friends, Patricia, had gone upstairs just minutes before the necklace disappeared, and when she came down, her face looked uneasy, darting glances around. Arthur froze the video. His heart pounded. Could it be? Before he could think further, the baby's cry echoed down the hall. Lucas was crying loudly, calling for something only he seemed to understand. Shoo, shoo. Arthur picked him up. The child stared at the door, as if expecting someone to walk in. Arthur rocked him gently, trying to calm him, but something felt off. It was like the boy could sense someone was missing. He looked at the family portrait on the wall. In the photo, Helena smiled stiffly, holding the baby. But even there, the boy's eyes looked distant, as if fixed on somewhere else. Back in the cell, Clara closed her eyes and began to whisper softly, almost unconsciously, "Shoo, shoo, it's gonna pass, my little one." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she remembered the hospital days, when she'd cared for Lucas as a fragile newborn, fighting to survive. She had rocked him the same way, with that same gentle sound. Shoo, shoo. Across town, at that very moment, Lucas suddenly stopped crying, as if he had just heard the echo of the voice that had soothed him since birth. Arthur felt the change instantly. The boy relaxed, smiled faintly, and rested his head on his father's shoulder. Arthur stood there motionless. This can't be a coincidence. Rain lashed against the mansion windows, and silence filled the room. The father, the baby, and the absence of the wronged woman. 3 lives tied together by a mystery still waiting to unfold. And as Clara fell asleep on the cold prison floor, a strange feeling took over her heart. One day, the truth would surface, and when it did, no one would ever look at her the same way again. In that silent, freezing cell, Clara stared at the cracked ceiling, trying to understand when her life had turned upside down. It wasn't the first injustice she had faced, but it was, without doubt, the cruelest. Steal a necklace, me of all people, who never had the guts to take even an extra loaf of bread at the bakery, she thought, eyes filled with tears. The distant sound of rain tapping the roof made her think of simpler days, before being a maid, before humiliation, before losing everything. There was a time when she wore a white coat, not an apron. Instead of scrubbing floors, she handled syringes and thermometers. Clara had been a nursing technician, and not just any. She was one of the best at the city hospital, patient, caring, and respected by the doctors. It was there, just over a year ago, that she met baby Lucas, the same child now sleeping in Arthur Brando's golden crib. He had been born premature, at only 6 months, a tiny baby with pink skin and shallow breaths. Many said he wouldn't make it, but Clara refused to believe that. She remembered that first night vividly. The little one lay in an incubator, surrounded by tubes and monitors beeping non-stop. The mother, Helena, had visited for barely 15 minutes, leaving in disgust at the hospital smell. The father, Arthur, never came, too busy with meetings and travel. It was Clara who stayed beside him through every long night, changing diapers, checking his temperature, humming softly to calm him. And it was there that the sound was born, the one that would change everything. Shoo, shoo, sleep, my little one, shoo, shoo. The baby seemed to know that sound. Every time she whispered it, his heartbeat steadied. Doctors were amazed at his progress. "This boy has a special bond with you, Clara," the pediatrician said. She would just smile, unable to explain why. For weeks, she cared for him as if he were her own child. When he was finally discharged, she cried. She never imagined she'd see him again, but fate, unpredictable as ever, found a way to cross their paths once more. Months later, the hospital faced budget cuts. Staff were laid off by the dozens. Clara was one of the first to lose her job. Without a full nursing degree, she couldn't find another position. Bills piled up, and she took the first job she could find, a cleaner in a mansion in the city's wealthy district. On her first day, as soon as she entered and heard a baby crying, her heart nearly stopped. That sound, the tone, the rhythm, she knew it instantly. She dropped the bucket and followed the voice to the nursery. And there he was, Lucas, the same baby she had once fought to keep alive, but now he was surrounded by luxury, nannies and expensive toys, and parents who didn't seem to realize the treasure they had. Fate truly had a cruel sense of irony. Clara never told anyone the truth. Not Arthur, not Helena. She kept it buried in her heart, afraid of sounding like an opportunist, afraid of losing her job, afraid of everything. But every time the baby cried, she was there, and he calmed down to the same familiar sound. Shoo-shoo, the sound only they understood. Now, in that prison cell, remembering it all, Clara felt both pain and tenderness. The memory of Lucas was what kept her going. He'll grow up, he'll forget me, but I'll never forget him, she thought. A key turned, breaking the silence. The night officer opened the slot on the door. "You've got a visitor." Clara frowned. "For me?" "A man. Says he knows you." She stood, confused. When she reached the waiting area, she almost couldn't believe it. It was the doctor from the hospital. "Clara, my God, what happened to you?" She broke down in tears. "I've been accused of theft, doctor, but I swear I didn't do anything." He looked at her with pity. "I know who you are. I know your honesty. I saw the news, and I also know that the baby you saved belongs to the man who accused you." Clara's eyes widened. "He doesn't know, but he will," the doctor said softly. "Fate doesn't make mistakes." Meanwhile, at the mansion, Arthur stared at his son's crib, unable to sleep. The baby slept soundly, holding a small white cloth he never let go of. Arthur had never understood why he was so attached to it, but when he picked it up, he noticed something embroidered in the corner. C.R. The initials of Clara Rodriguez. Arthur froze. He called Helena. "Do you know where this cloth came from?" She shrugged. "I don't know. It probably came with the hospital stuff." Arthur stayed silent for a long moment, feeling the weight of too many coincidences. The woman who calmed his son with a word no one else knew. The cloth with her initials in the crib. The baby's eyes always searching for her whenever she entered the room. Something was terribly wrong, and he was beginning to realize he might have made the biggest mistake of his life. Back at the station, Clara leaned her head against the wall, exhausted, but a faint spark of hope had just come alive again. She had no idea how or when, but deep down, she knew that the same baby she had once saved would end up saving her too. The sound of rain outside echoed with the same rhythm she used to soothe Lucas. Shoo, shoo. And fate, silent like that lullaby, was already setting the stage for the moment when everything would be revealed. Arthur Brandeau was used to being in control of his companies, his meetings, his people. But for the first time in a long while, something slipped completely out of his logic. It was late. The mansion was asleep. The only sound came from the baby monitor. Lucas stirred restlessly, mumbling the same sound that had haunted Arthur's mind since that fateful night. Shoo, shoo. He got up, went downstairs, and headed to his office. On the computer, he opened the footage from the security cameras at the party once again. He had watched those videos dozens of times, but something inside told him he was still missing a detail, one piece out of place. The video showed Clara cleaning the hall, smiling, arranging glasses, picking up plates. At no point did she go near the table where the diamond necklace had been left, but one of Helena's friends, Patricia, appeared walking alone down the hallway leading to the bedroom. Arthur paused the video. The woman looked around nervously, fiddled with her purse, disappeared for a few seconds, and came out adjusting her dress. His pulse quickened. What was she doing there? He rewound a few seconds and caught another detail. Helena glancing discreetly toward Patricia, as if the two were sharing a signal. Arthur leaned back in the chair, stunned. A heavy discomfort began to rise inside him. He turned toward his son's crib in the corner of the office. Lucas was fast asleep, clutching the little white cloth, the one with the embroidered initials, CR. Arthur brushed his fingers over the stitched letters, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Clara Rodriguez," he whispered. Suddenly the image of her being dragged away, begging for help, filled his mind. "Mr. Arthur, I would never touch anything. And that look in her eyes, wounded, sincere. He knew lies. That wasn't one. By morning, Helena walked into the office and found her husband still sitting in the same spot, dark circles under his eyes. "You didn't sleep?" "I couldn't." "Why?" "I've been watching the party footage again." Helena groaned, irritated. "Arthur, please. We've already dealt with this. The woman was caught, the necklace was found, and our family's name is clean. It's over." Arthur stood, keeping his voice calm. "Did you know Patricia went into the bedroom before the necklace disappeared?" Helena froze for a split second, but quickly regained her composure. "She did? Oh, she probably went to the bathroom. Big deal. Then why didn't you tell the police?" "Because it didn't matter. You're overreacting." Arthur stepped closer, locking eyes with her. "I'm not overreacting. Something's off. And not with the maid." Helena crossed her arms, defensive. "Are you saying my friend stole it?" "I'm saying someone's lying, and if that woman is innocent, then we've done something terrible." The silence between them was sharp as a blade. Helena looked away. "You're letting emotions cloud your judgment over a simple housekeeper." Arthur sighed. "She's not just a housekeeper. You know that cloth our son carries everywhere? It has her initials on it, Clara Rodriguez. She was a nurse. She cared for Lucas when he was born." Helena's face went pale. How do you know that?" "Because I checked. I called the hospital. She worked there. Stayed with him day and night." Helena sank onto the couch, tense. Arthur continued, his voice heavy. "That's why he calms down when he hears that sound. She taught it to him. She saved his life once, and we destroyed hers." Meanwhile, at the police station, Clara was about to be transferred to a women's prison. The doctor from the hospital had tried to intervene, but it hadn't worked. She sat quietly, exhausted, staring at the floor. Then an officer approached, saying the Brando family's lawyer had ordered her provisional release. "What do you mean?" "Direct order from Mr. Arthur Brando. You're being called in for another hearing." Clara stood, her legs trembling. On the ride back to the mansion, her heart raced wildly. She didn't know if it was a trap or a chance to tell her truth, but something inside told her fate was moving in her favor again. When she arrived, Arthur was waiting in his office. Helena wasn't there. He stood slowly and for the first time looked her in the eyes without the coldness. "Clara, tell me the truth. Did you know my son before you came to work here?" She hesitated. Fear still outweighed trust. But finally she said, "Yes, sir. I worked at the hospital where he was born. I was the one who cared for him in those first weeks. He was so tiny. No one thought he'd survive. I stayed up all night with him. I used to hum that sound. Shoo, shoo. It was the only way to make him sleep." Arthur was silent for a few moments. The baby, in the nanny's arms, began to fuss. Arthur picked him up, brought him closer to Clara, and as soon as Lucas saw her, his face lit up with a smile. Clara instinctively made the sound, shoo, shoo, and just like magic, the baby relaxed completely. Arthur swallowed hard. My God! The truth hit him like a punch to the chest. You really know him?" Clara lowered her head. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want people to think I was trying to take advantage. I just wanted to work and earn my living." Arthur took a step back, his eyes filling with guilt. "And we called you a thief." At that exact moment, Helena appeared at the door. "Arthur, what is this woman doing here?" "She's here to prove her innocence," he said firmly. "Prove what?" The cameras show more than you think, Helena." Her face went pale. Arthur walked to the desk and pointed at the monitor. "I saw it. Patricia went into the bedroom before the necklace disappeared. And you knew. You stayed quiet to protect your friend." Helena was speechless. Arthur continued, his tone calm but filled with disappointment. "You let an innocent woman be dragged out in handcuffs, right in front of our son." The room fell silent. Clara felt her chest tighten. Arthur turned to her and said sincerely, "I promise you, Clara, I'll clear your name, and I'll find out everything that really happened." And in that moment she realized the same man who had destroyed her life was now the only one who could save it. Arthur didn't sleep that night. The sound of rain hitting the windows felt like the rhythm of his guilt. On the computer screen, the party video was paused exactly where Patricia, Helena's friend, walked out of the bedroom fixing her dress, the necklace missing right after. He stared at it, stomach twisting, not only because he might have accused the wrong person, but because something even worse had sunk in. The woman sharing his bed knew everything. As he replayed the footage, a mix of anger and shame washed over him. How could he have been so blind? Clara, that humble, hard-working woman he had allowed to be handcuffed in front of everyone, was now the only person he truly trusted. Helena appeared at the doorway, her expression tense. "You didn't sleep again?" "No." "Why? Are you still obsessing over this? I told you the police were wrong, Helena, just like I was. And you knew." She froze. Arthur turned the monitor toward her and pressed play. The footage clearly showed Patricia slipping the necklace into her purse. "Care to explain this?" Helena tried to keep her composure, but her voice trembled. She told me later. Said it was a mistake. She was drunk. Didn't know what she was doing. I just wanted to avoid a scandal." Arthur stood up slowly, holding back his fury. "To avoid a scandal, you let an innocent woman be humiliated, handcuffed and jailed in front of our child." Helena crossed her arms defensively. "You don't understand, Arthur. Patricia's father is one of our investors. If this came out, it would ruin everything." Arthur looked at her like she was a stranger. "So you traded a woman's dignity for business convenience?" Helena rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, don't start with that moral drama now. She's just a maid." That was the breaking point. Arthur stepped closer, his voice cold as steel. "She's the woman who saved our son's life." Helena blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "She was the nurse who cared for Lucas when he was born premature. She's the one who kept him alive. You know that sound he makes, the shoo-shoo, that's hers." Helena's face turned white. Arthur went on. "And out of pure fate, she ended up back in this house. And what did we do? We destroyed her." That morning, Arthur called in his personal lawyer and the head of security. "I want you to review every recording from the night of the party, from the guest's arrival to the moment of the arrest." The lawyer hesitated. "Mr. Brandome, this could cause a scandal." "I don't care about scandals, I care about justice." While the internal investigation restarted, Clara sat quietly in the guest room, unsure of what was happening. She still couldn't believe Arthur himself had brought her back from the police station. The house felt cold, tense, but different. Her employer's gaze no longer carried arrogance. There was something like remorse in it. The baby cried upstairs. Clara went up instinctively, and the moment she appeared in the doorway, Lucas stopped crying. Arthur, right behind her, witnessed the scene. The little boy stretched out his arms toward her and smiled. Clara gently picked him up, and he rested his head on her shoulder, peaceful, as if he'd finally come home. Arthur stood there, watching that simple yet powerful moment. There was no denying the bond between them. In that instant, he understood what money could never buy: true loyalty. Hours later, the head of security entered the office, holding a flash drive. "Sir, I think you should see this." Arthur plugged it into the computer. It was footage from the side gate, a camera no one had checked before. The video clearly showed Patricia leaving the mansion with an overstuffed purse, minutes before the police were called. "And there's more," the guard said. When the investigators arrived, Mrs. Helena ordered the main hallway cameras turned off. Claimed it was to protect the guests' privacy. Arthur felt his blood boil, rage mixed with guilt. He had accused the wrong woman, and the accomplice of the real thief had been sleeping beside him every night. "Prepare everything. I want printed evidence, copies of all videos and a full report, and bring Clara here." Clara entered the office, her heart pounding. Arthur stood there, eyes glistening. On the table lay a small box with the necklace inside. "Clara, the necklace was found. You were telling the truth all along." Her hand flew to her mouth in shock. "My God, then why—" Arthur took a deep breath. "Because my wife and her friend tried to cover up their mistake, and I let it happen." Tears rolled down Clara's cheeks. Not from relief, but from pure exhaustion. "I just wanted to clear my name, sir. Nothing more." Arthur lowered his gaze. "I know, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Publicly." Clara stepped back, startled. "Publicly?" "Yes. The world deserves to see who you really are, and who I was for not listening." Later that afternoon, Arthur called the press and announced a conference. Reporters gathered in front of the mansion, expecting another scandal. Helena, desperate, tried to stop him. "You'll destroy our image." Arthur didn't even look at her. "I'd rather lose my reputation than live with guilt." In the main hall, Clara entered shyly. All the cameras turned toward her. Arthur held up the necklace for everyone to see. This woman was wronged, accused of a crime she didn't commit. While we all judged her, she stayed silent, with the same dignity of the woman who once saved my son's life. Flashes went off. Murmurs filled the room. Helena and Patricia stood in the back, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Arthur's voice trembled with emotion. "Today, I apologize publicly, and I declare that this house and my name owe her far more than any jewel ever could." Clara tried to speak, but emotion overtook her. And in that moment, the baby, in the nanny's arms beside her, softly babbled, "Shoo-shoo." The entire room fell silent. Arthur smiled through tears. "She's the one who taught him that. That's why my son sleeps peacefully, because he recognizes a pure heart when he sees one." The cameras captured the exact moment when the handcuffed maid became a symbol of dignity. But there was still something Arthur didn't know, something fate was saving for the next twist, a secret far deeper than the stolen necklace, Clara's hidden past, and the mysterious bond between their lives. The press conference scandal spread like wildfire. Headlines flooded the internet. "Maid cleared by millionaire after false theft accusation." "Wronged woman becomes a national symbol of dignity and courage." But behind the spotlights, the story was far from over. Arthur Brandon knew revealing the truth was only the beginning. Now he wanted to uncover who had truly orchestrated everything, and for that he had to move in silence. While the country buzzed over his public apology, tension filled the mansion. Helena locked herself in their bedroom, avoiding him completely. Patricia had vanished, and Clara, still shaken, tried to understand how a simple quest for justice had turned into a national spectacle. That morning, Arthur called her into his office. She entered quietly, eyes tired. "Mr. Arthur, thank you for clearing my name, but I don't know if I should stay here." He stood up and spoke gently. "Clara, I don't want you to leave. You deserve to stay, but differently. I want you to help me find out everything that really happened." Clara blinked in surprise. "Me? Help you?" "Yes. You're the only person in this house I can trust. I need your help to see what others can't." That night, the plan began. Arthur reinstalled all the security cameras Helena had ordered turned off. He added new ones, hidden in strategic spots, the garage, the side entrance, and even the hallways where Helena's friends liked to gather. But the most important part was Clara's role. She would return to her routine as if nothing had changed. "I want everyone to think it's all over," Arthur said, "but in reality we'll be watching." Clara nodded, her heart pounding. She didn't want revenge, she wanted peace. But deep down, she knew this was the only way to finally end that cycle of pain. Meanwhile, Arthur quietly hired a private investigator. "I need you to dig into everything about Patricia and Helena. Bank records, trips, anything. I want to know if there was blackmail, bribery, or a cover-up." The detective, seasoned and calm, simply replied, "Give me 3 days." For those 3 days the house felt tense, heavy. Helena pretended everything was fine, but avoided her husband's gaze. Whenever she crossed paths with Clara, she masked her discomfort with arrogance. "Enjoying your fame, are you? The TV maid, huh?" Clara just lowered her head and kept working. She had learned that dignity isn't defended with words, it's proven through actions. The baby, however, welcomed her every day with laughter and open arms. It was as if Lucas was the only one who truly saw who she was. And that small gesture, repeated day after day, was what kept Clara strong while she waited for the truth to surface. 3 days later, Arthur received the investigator's report. What he found inside was worse than he ever imagined. Patricia hadn't just taken the necklace, she was broke and had tried to sell it to cover her debts. And the most shocking part, Helena had known all along. The messages exchanged between them were crystal clear. Patricia, I need to hide this, Lena. Please. Helena, leave it to me. I'll handle the story. Just keep your mouth shut. Patricia, and the maid, Helena. She's perfect. No one will ever doubt it if it's her. Arthur went speechless, his face flushed red with fury. She planned everything, used an innocent woman as a shield. Across the room, Clara noticed the change in his expression. Mr. Arthur, did something happen? He took a deep breath and answered, Yes, now I know who destroyed your life, and she's going to answer for it. That night, Arthur called his lawyer. I want a criminal case filed against Patricia and my wife, charges of slander, defamation, and perjury, and I want it done by the book. No media chaos, no scandal. After all this, that's impossible. Then make it look like justice, not revenge. While the lawyer prepared the paperwork, Arthur stepped outside to the garden, where Clara sat with Lucas on her lap. The baby laughed, playing with a toy necklace she held in her hand. He won't let you go any more, Arthur said with a faint smile. Clara smiled back, though her eyes still carried sadness. I just want to live in peace, sir, without fear of being accused again. Arthur walked closer, his voice steady. You will, and I promise. No one will ever speak your name without respect again. His eyes were different now, filled with remorse and admiration. And for the first time in a long while, Clara felt something she thought she'd lost. Trust. The same trust that once vanished from her world was slowly returning, as gently as a wound, healing with time. The next morning, Helena was stunned when the lawyer arrived at the mansion. Mrs. Helena Brandon, you're being formally charged with false accusation, defamation, and obstruction of justice. Her eyes widened. Arthur, what is this? Have you lost your mind? He replied calmly but firmly. No, I'm just putting the truth back where it belongs. Helena, furious, tried to argue. You'll destroy our reputation. Arthur took a deep breath. A reputation built on lies never lasts. But the truth, it survives everything. That same afternoon, Patricia was arrested. The media exploded again. But this time, the headlines were different. Millionaire's wife's friend arrested for jewelry theft and false accusation. Clara watched the report in silence. She felt no joy, no revenge, only relief. The cycle was finally closed. Her name was cleared, and justice had been done. Arthur entered the room quietly. It's over, Clara, he said softly. She looked at him, eyes shining with emotion. Thank you, not for defending me, but for believing me. Arthur replied with sincerity, I should have believed you from the start. The baby's laughter broke the silence, filling the air with peace. And in that instant, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, serenity. But fate, as always, still held one last twist, a revelation that would forever tie the lives of the maid and the millionaire. The sun was setting over the city when Arthur made a decision that would change everything. He knew justice had already been served. Patricia arrested, Helena facing trial, but something still weighed on him. It was the look in Clara's eyes. Even after being cleared, she still carried the shame of having been judged in front of everyone. And there was only one way to erase that, by turning her humiliation into redemption before the world. Arthur decided to organize a new event. Not a party, but a charity dinner in the name of the foundation he was creating. The Light of a New Start Institute, dedicated to helping women who had been wrongfully accused or unjustly treated. And the most surprising part, Clara would be the guest of honor. When the invitations spread among the city's elite, many were shocked. The maid, the one from the scandal. Arthur's answer was always the same. Yes, she'll be honored, and you'll all understand why. On the night of the dinner, the mansion's grand hall was full again. But the atmosphere was completely different. The same people who had whispered and judged before were there now, some out of curiosity, others out of guilt. Soft lights reflected on the crystal glasses, and the clinking of silverware faded beneath the weight of anticipation. At the center of the hall, a special seat awaited Clara. She arrived as she always did, simple and composed. A modest blue dress, her hair tied back, her gaze calm. Arthur greeted her at the entrance, extending his hand. "Tonight, no one will look down on you, Clara. Tonight they'll see you as they should have from the beginning." She smiled nervously. "I don't know if I deserve all this." "You deserve much more." As the guests took their seats, Arthur stepped onto a small stage and picked up the microphone. The room fell silent. "Months ago, this house made a terrible mistake, one that nearly destroyed the life of an honest woman, and I was at the center of that mistake." A murmur swept through the room. Arthur drew a long breath and continued. "I accused a woman of theft, without proof, without listening, without compassion. But time, truth, and a 10-month-old child taught me that justice always speaks, even when its voice is small." People exchanged glances. Arthur gestured for Clara to join him on stage. She walked slowly, hesitant, as curious eyes followed her. Arthur looked at the crowd and said, "This is Clara Rodriguez, the woman I humiliated, and who, even then, taught me what forgiveness really means. The woman who saved my son when he was just a fragile, premature baby, and who was punished for a crime she never committed." The crowd began whispering louder now. Some, visibly ashamed, lowered their eyes. Arthur raised his hand, holding up the necklace again, now sealed inside a glass case, a symbol of everything that had happened. "This necklace isn't worth a tenth of what this woman is, and from this day on, it will stand for something new. I officially announce the creation of the Light of a New Start Foundation, inspired by the strength and dignity of Clara." The room erupted in applause, but the most unexpected moment was yet to come. Suddenly a woman stood up in the middle of the audience. It was Patricia, Helena's former friend, her face pale, eyes full of remorse. Security moved toward her, but Arthur motioned for them to let her speak. She walked to the microphone, trembling. "I need to say something. I was the one. I took the necklace. I was desperate. And when I realized what I'd done, Helena told me to stay quiet. I let an innocent woman pay for my mistake. I haven't slept since." Tears streamed down her face. Clara stood still, frozen. Arthur stared at Patricia and said firmly, "It's too late to erase what's been done, but never too late to tell the truth." Patricia broke down and was quietly escorted out. The room fell into a heavy silence. Clara took a deep breath, then, for the first time that night, stepped to the microphone. Her voice, calm and steady, carried through the hall. "I hold no anger. I carried pain for a long time, but today I understand. Hatred is a prison worse than any cell. What saved me was the love of a child, and the faith that truth always finds its way." The audience rose to their feet, many in tears, others applauding. Arthur, visibly moved, wiped his eyes discreetly. After the speech, people began to gather around her. Some apologized, others offered jobs, and many just wanted to shake her hand. But the most powerful moment came when one of the guests, the same woman who had filmed the scene of her arrest months before, knelt in front of Clara and said, "I was the one who filmed you being taken away in handcuffs. Tonight I want to film you being applauded." And she did. The video of Clara's redemption went viral within hours. The same crowd that had mocked her now praised her. The same internet that had condemned her now called her an inspiration. And the baby in Arthur's arms smiled every time her face appeared on the screen. When everyone had gone, and the mansion was silent again, Arthur approached Clara, who was still admiring the flowers sent by guests. "You turned shame into strength. I don't know how you do it." She smiled softly. "Because I learned forgiveness is the only way to be free. Everything else is just noise." Arthur smiled back. "You changed my life, Clara, and I'll do everything I can to change yours too." She looked away, unsure how to answer. The baby murmured quietly, reaching for her. Arthur handed Lucas into her arms, and she held him close with tenderness. The child rested his little face against hers and drifted off to sleep. For a moment, time stood still. And there, in that meaningful silence, Arthur realized something profound. Her story wasn't about injustice, it was about redemption. But fate, once again, still held one final piece of the puzzle, a discovery that would bind their lives even more deeply and unexpectedly. Something hidden in the past, waiting for the right moment to surface. The days following the dinner were calm at the Brando mansion. The storm had finally passed. Clara now worked there freely, though part of her still felt a quiet weight, a mix of gratitude and melancholy. She sensed that this chapter of her life was closing, yet destiny wasn't quite done with her story. Arthur, meanwhile, was a changed man. He had left behind the coldness of business and begun devoting himself to his family, or what remained of it. Helena had moved to the countryside, awaiting trial in silence. And little Lucas was growing strong and joyful, as if he could sense that peace had finally returned to the house. One morning, Arthur walked through the garden with his son in his arms. Clara was sweeping the terrace when she heard him call, "Clara, could you come here a moment?" She wiped her hands on her apron and approached, cautious. Arthur seemed different, his eyes gentler, almost humble. "There's something I want to show you." He led her to the office. On the desk lay a stack of papers and a blue folder with her name on it. Clara Rodriguez. "I asked my lawyer to go through the hospital records," he explained. "I wanted to understand how fate really brought you to us." She frowned slightly. "Why, sir?" "Because I have a feeling there's more to this story than we thought." Arthur opened the folder, revealing old yellow documents, adoption files, medical records, names partly erased by time. Clara's eyes widened. This is from my childhood." "Yes. I found out you grew up at the São Bento orphanage, right?" "Yes, I lived there until I was 15. Arthur took a breath before continuing. "What you might not know is that my mother was a volunteer there. She helped the children on weekends, and according to these records, she was the one who took care of you when you first arrived. As a baby." Clara covered her mouth, stunned. "No. That can't be true." "It can," he said softly. "It's all here." Arthur opened an old photograph. In it, a smiling woman held a small girl in her arms, Clara. On the back of the photo, a handwritten note read, "For little Clara, who reminds me that love is the greatest legacy one can leave." Signed, Maria Brandome, Arthur's mother. Tears ran down Clara's face before she even noticed. I knew your mother. She used to sneak me candies. I called her Aunt Maria. She always said that one day the world would return the good I gave without realizing it." Arthur smiled, deeply moved. "And it did, in a way she never could have imagined. You saved my son, and you saved me too." For a few seconds, silence filled the room. It was as if every wound, every guilt, every humiliation had melted away. The past, now uncovered, showed that destiny had never made a mistake. It had only waited for the right moment to connect the pieces. Arthur continued, his voice steady. "Clara, I can't erase what happened, but I can give you a new beginning. I want you to take a permanent position at the foundation, as the director of the social project that bears your name. Women need to hear your story." Her eyes widened. "Director? Me? I only finished high school, sir." Arthur chuckled softly. "And how many diplomas do you think it takes to have character?" "You've already shown more wisdom and courage than most people I know." Clara took a deep breath, holding back her emotion. "I'll accept, but on one condition." "What condition?" "That you promise this foundation won't be about me, but about every woman who's never been heard." Arthur nodded, smiling gently. "I promise, and I want you to know, this house is yours too, for as long as you wish to stay." That afternoon, they walked down to the garden with Lucas in their arms. The baby laughed, playing with the wind and the flowers. His giggles blended with the rustle of leaves, and Clara felt that every ounce of suffering had finally found its purpose. "It's funny," she said, looking up at the sky. "Everything started with an accusation and ended with a truth much greater." Arthur looked at her. "Sometimes God has to break us apart just to show what's inside." She smiled faintly. "And inside me, I just wanted someone to believe. Do you believe in yourself now? Arthur asked. Clara paused, then whispered, Now, yes. Lucas reached out his tiny arms toward her and murmured softly, Shoo shoo. They both laughed. Arthur looked at her tenderly. The sound you created to calm my son ended up calming all of us. In the days that followed, the foundation began to take shape. Clara visited shelters, guided women who had been wronged, shared her story in interviews and talks. In no time, she became a symbol of strength and grace. People no longer called her the accused maid. They called her Clara Rodriguez, the woman who turned humiliation into hope. Arthur watched from a distance, proud, not out of gratitude, but admiration. He saw in her what his mother had always said, great hearts don't shine because they want to be seen. They shine because they light the way for others in the dark. One night, after closing the foundation for the day, Clara ran her hand across the plaque at the entrance. It read, Light of a New Start Foundation, inspired by the strength of Clara Rodriguez. She smiled, looking toward the stars. Thank you, Aunt Maria, for giving me a home, even when I didn't know I had one. Arthur approached, carrying Lucas asleep in his arms. He only sleeps when he hears your voice, he said with a soft laugh. Clara looked at the child and smiled. Then I guess we're all family now, aren't we? Arthur nodded, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, we are. The story that began with handcuffs ended with applause. What once brought shame became respect. What once caused pain became purpose. And the woman everyone once accused became the living proof of something far greater, that no lie lasts forever, and that love, when it's true, always finds its way back. Time passed. Months later, the mansion no longer felt the same. The walls that once echoed with shouts and accusations now held laughter, soft footsteps, and the gentle sounds of life returning to peace. Arthur walked down the corridor with his son in his arms, watching Clara from afar, sitting in the garden with children from the foundation. She told stories, shared smiles, and the golden afternoon light shone on her face, as if the whole world had decided to redeem itself through her. Arthur stopped at the doorway, simply watching. He had never imagined that the woman who once entered his home as a maid would become the most important person in his life, not because of status or duty, but because she reminded him every day of something he'd forgotten, his humanity. That week, the Light of a New Start Foundation celebrated its first anniversary. The event would be broadcast on television, and hundreds of guests had confirmed attendance. Among them were women who had been helped by Clara, each sharing stories of resilience that echoed her own. Each of these voices is a piece of my healing, Clara told a reporter during an interview, because none of us are truly free while others remain trapped in pain. Arthur watched the interview in silence, Lucas playing at his feet. There was something magical about the way she spoke. No bitterness, no resentment, only truth. It was as if life had taken everything from her, just to prove that no one can steal what truly matters. That night, after the ceremony, Clara found Arthur alone in the garden. The party lights still twinkled in the distance, and the hum of the city felt far away. It was beautiful, she said softly. It was fair, he replied. You gave a voice to those no one listened to, Clara. You did more than any of us ever imagined. She smiled faintly, though her eyes seemed distant. I just followed what my conscience told me. In the end, the truth did the rest. Arthur stepped closer, hesitating. You've changed the way I see everything. Money, people, even what it means to be rich. She raised an eyebrow, curious. And what does it mean now? Arthur looked at his son, asleep in the stroller. It means peace. And peace only comes when you know you're standing on the side of truth. Clara nodded, and for a moment the silence between them spoke louder than 1,000 words. In the following days, Clara began working on a new project for the foundation, a reintegration program for women leaving the prison system. She often said that if she had learned anything in that cold cell, it was that no one is born ready. We are all shaped by our falls. One afternoon, a volunteer said to her, "Clara, your name is everywhere. Have you ever thought of writing a book about your story?" She laughed. "A book? I wouldn't even know where to start." "Start with what kept you going," the volunteer replied. That sentence stayed with her. That night, alone, Clara opened a notebook and wrote the first line. "I didn't know rock bottom had a flaw until I realized it was the push I needed to rise." Meanwhile, Arthur received unexpected news. A former business partner approached him with an offer, a multi-million-dollar investment in a new venture. But for the first time in his life, he said no. "My time is worth more than any deal. I work for purpose now, not for profit." His assistant looked puzzled. Arthur only smiled, glancing at the photo on his office wall. Him, Lucas, and Clara, taken during the Foundation's first event. 3 lives intertwined by chance that, deep down, never really felt like chance at all. One morning, Clara woke up early and walked into the nursery. Lucas was already standing, gripping the crib rail, smiling as soon as he saw her. She picked him up and rocked him gently. The little boy pressed his face against hers and murmured the sound that had become part of all their lives. "Shoo shoo." She smiled, eyes glistening. That sound, born in a cold ICU, now meant love, safety, and new beginnings. Arthur appeared at the doorway, watching quietly. "Do you notice it?" he said softly. "The same sound you used to calm him has ended up calming this whole house." Clara looked at him, her eyes glowing. Maybe because love, when it's real, has a sound, a presence, and it never gets lost. A few months later, Helena finally faced trial. In a surprising turn, Clara was called to testify. Everyone expected her to be stern, but her words stunned the courtroom. "I didn't come here to condemn," she began. "I came to close a chapter. No one is too perfect to make mistakes, and no one is too small to change. I was once imprisoned for something I didn't do, and I know that carrying guilt is the worst prison there is. Today, I choose to forgive." The courtroom went silent. Helena, who had been sitting with her head down, began to cry. For the first time, she looked up at Clara and said, "Thank you for being more human than I could ever be." As they left the courthouse, Arthur gently touched Clara's arm and said with quiet awe, "You just taught me what true greatness is." She smiled. "It's not greatness, sir. It's freedom." Years later, the Foundation grew and became known nationwide. Clara became a symbol of justice and forgiveness. And little Lucas, now older, proudly told his classmates, "My heart mom saved my life twice, when I was born and when she taught me what real love means." Arthur always smiled when he heard that, because he knew his son was right. On the main wall of the Foundation, engraved in golden letters, were the words, "Truth can be handcuffed, but it can never stay imprisoned." And beneath it, her name, Clara Rodriguez. The woman once taken away as a criminal had become a symbol of compassion. Injustice had turned into purpose, tears had turned into strength, and Shimulan Shushu, that simple, pure sound, echoed forever as a reminder that even in the deepest pain, love always finds a way to be heard. Because in the end, life isn't about what's taken from you. It's about what you choose to do with what remains. And Clara chose to begin again.